Did your last couples therapy appointment leave you feeling more raw than when you walked in? Maybe you and your partner drove home in silence, and then you spent the rest of the night wondering if therapy is actually making things worse. Sadly, this is not uncommon. In fact, you are far from alone if couples therapy has left you feeling more confused, more activated than actually connected and clear. The reason why any of us would go to therapy in the first place. The average couple waits 7 years before reaching out to make an appointment. So by the time you're sitting in that office, there's a lot of accumulated distance and hurt and resentment to sort through. Most couples therapy is designed to focus on the issue in the relationship today. Things like communication or how you're handling conflict, issues in intimacy. And of course, these things are challenging, but they're not the root of the struggle. So diving into these issues without addressing what created that whole pattern and that pain in the first place often stirs up so much more than it resolves. When we focus only on the issues of today without understanding what they're really connected to, we end up arguing about all the same things with different triggers. We just sort of have a different entry point where we might argue about it, but it's kind of on repeat. So it makes these temporary shifts that don't last. And we end up inflaming the very wounds we're trying to heal, feeling frustrated and really wondering, what am I doing? I'll never forget working with Sarah and Tom. They came to see me after 18 months of traditional couples therapy. They were exhausted. They had learned active listening. They had practiced I statements. They could identify their feelings with impressive clarity. They even prioritized date nights. And they were still stuck in the same cycle, hurting each other with a version of the same argument. It just would go round and round again. She would bring up something that mattered to her, and he would shut down. She would escalate, trying to be heard, and he would withdraw even further. By the end of their conversation, she felt dismissed, and he felt attacked, and they'd go to separate corners of the house until some days would pass and they could feel like they could approach again. Now, the work they'd done in therapy up until that point kept focusing on the communication patterns, kept really focusing on this cycle, which makes a lot of sense on the surface. But what nobody had really explored with them is that Sarah grew up with a mom who's emotionally unavailable, very distracted. So when Sarah needed something, she had to make it a huge big deal in order to even be noticed by her mom. And then Tom grew up in a home where any kind of emotional expression felt dangerous. His parents fought a lot, loudly, and when things escalated, they often turned violent. So when voices were raised, his body remembers bad things happen. So he learned that the safest response to any kind of conflict or intensity was to disappear. Now, it's understandable when you start to look at what both bring in to this conflict or to the difficulties that are happening in their relationship. It's almost like they're colliding every single time they tried to talk about something that really mattered, something that felt tender or meaningful. And so it's not that she was demanding, she was trying to be seen. And it's not that he was dismissive, he was trying to tuck into a sense of safety. So they started to understand each other's family imprint, and then something could shift. They stopped personalizing each other's responses, and they started recognizing when these old patterns were running the show. It was the one that was running things in their marriage. Now, I think a really important shift is that they began to choose different responses based on what was happening right here today in front of them, not what their bodies remembered from the past. I think that might be one of the main reasons why traditional couples therapy can stir up more conflict, leaving both people feeling raw and exposed, because it personalizes what's actually systemic. And so your partner's withdrawal is not a personal rejection. It's much more about how his family handled overwhelm or intensity. And your response to his distance inside of the relationship, it's not too much. Maybe it's how your grandmother and even her mother before her learned to take up space in a world that wanted them to not rock the boat. And that simply doesn't work for you anymore. I think often couples therapy focuses on the issue. So these patterns get blamed on the individual, saying things like he's avoidant or she's demanding, she's too controlling. And then round and round we go, pointing the finger, passing the blame, continuing to hurt each other because we're missing the understanding that it's the pattern or this repetitive cycle that you're stuck in. And that's what's going to create the change that you're seeking. We want to explore why these patterns keep repeating. I believe it's happening in order for them to finally be healed. In my 20 years of working with couples in distress, one truth keeps showing up year after year. It's the pattern, not the person. And so what looks like your partner's issues are actually inherited responses. And what continually triggers you is what you bring into the mix. Those patterns connect with yours, and we just kind of mix into this place where we continue to trigger that part that's trying to heal. And so the problem is not what you naturally need in your loving connections, or even what you continually argue about. It's what you're unconsciously repeating. These aren't really marriage problems. They're actually pointing much more to your family imprints. I think what we're really dealing with here is that traditional therapy tries to solve the problem at the wrong level. It's like trying to fix a computer by cleaning off the screen when the problem is in the operating system. You can learn all the communication techniques in the world, but if you're still running the emotional software that you downloaded from your family at age 5, these techniques will not create the kind of improvements that you're looking for to have more peace and connection and just harmony inside of your relationship. I often tell my clients this idea of being each other's safe place to land in the world. And so when regular therapy stirs up that pain without providing the context to make sense of it, of course you leave your sessions more activated, more triggered. And now you're expected to navigate all of that stirred up intensity until your next appointment, all on your own. Don't get me wrong. I'm not against couples therapy. When it works, it can be transformative. I've found that it works best when we start understanding the family imprints that each person is carrying. Because until you understand what you're both responding to, even why the trigger is there in the first place, you're going to keep having the same conversations in different words. Now, you can start right now by getting curious about your own family patterns. What did your parents, even inadvertently, teach you about conflict, in how they might have sorted out arguments, what you saw modeled, and then how they navigated conflict with you? Maybe even about some of your natural needs as a child. How are they responded to? So, not through words, but through your experiences in your childhood. And often our relationships today will give us all the clues we need. It's important to mention that it's never about blaming our parents or our family circumstances. It's more about understanding the imprint they've left in us and how we can move through them so we're not stuck repeating painful cycles inside of our relationship today. And of course, it might show up in our parenting as well. Another really interesting thing to explore is what I call invisible loyalties. We often unconsciously stay loyal to our family patterns, even when they cause us pain. By giving some time to understand this, it allows you to choose new patterns instead of unconsciously repeating all those old ones. If you watched your mom chase affection from your dad, You might find yourself drawn to emotionally unavailable partners. We're now unconsciously recreating the same dynamic of pursuing love and thinking that means love is working hard to earn someone's attention, affection. If this video has piqued your curiosity and you'd like to understand the family imprints running your relationship from somewhere in the background, I've created the Reveal Your Family Imprint Quiz. It's an in-depth quiz with a series of questions that help you to shine light on how your family imprint has shaped you and your relationship patterns. The link is in the description below. And maybe you'd like some weekly guidance on navigating these patterns. You can join my Sunday Relationship Tips newsletter. Every week, I send one insight that might shift how you see your situation. And you'll also be able to join that newsletter in the description below. If this video resonated, subscribe to the channel. I'm here to walk with you as you decide on your next best step forward towards more peace, more connection, and more love.